Welcome to the deep dive. So if you're constantly navigating the noise and just the chaos of a modern city, you absolutely know that feeling of mental exhaustion.
Oh, completely. The cognitive load, as they call it.
Exactly, the cognitive load of simply existing in such a dense environment. And you came to us with this incredible stack of sources, really asking a powerful question. How do we design our physical world, and maybe more importantly, our internal minds, to find some stillness?
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're trying to link the external environment with our internal well-being. And we have sources covering, well, everything from the acoustics of urban design, the surprising neuroscience of how our brains filter sensory input.
All the way to the philosophy of architecture and even a look at the quantum world.
Yes, the fundamental physics of observation itself.
It's a huge landscape. We're pulling from academic soundscape studies, neuroscience findings, philosophical texts on urban space, even some on Zen minimalism.
And the unity in all of it is, well, it's pretty striking. It reveals this core paradox. That modern life feels overwhelming, right? We're surrounded by endless noise and material stimulus. But the sources all point to the fact that we can actively design our way back to tranquility.
By controlling, or maybe minimizing, interaction.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start on the street level.
Yeah.
For decades, urban planning has treated noise as this, mechanical problem.
Right. Put up a barrier, enforce a decibel limit, problem solved.
But your sources show that this basic noise mitigation just isn't enough for true well-being. Why is that?
Because noise pollution isn't just about volume, it's a constant stressor, and it imposes a genuine public health cost.
So we're talking about real physical consequences.
Oh, yeah. When exposure is prolonged, we see increased stress hormones, links to cardiovascular problems, poor sleep, and even measurable cognitive impairments. Just lowering the noise floor doesn't get rid of the psychological stress of that environment.
So the goal has to shift then, from just noise reduction, which is a negative action, to something more sophisticated.
Yes, to soundscape design.
And that's about curating a positive experience, not just blocking a negative one.
Exactly. You're designing for well-being. You integrate sounds that enhance mood and encourage calm, like water, instead of just, mitigating traffic horns.
So what are some of the practical design strategies the sources highlight for this?
Well, natural elements are fundamental. Green spaces, vegetation, they're crucial because they absorb sound, but they also introduce their own calming ambience.
Sure.
But what's really clever is the strategic use of water features.
Fountains, waterfalls.
Right. They aren't just for looks. Their gentle, rhythmic sound is specifically used to mask and counteract the more disruptive noises of the city.
That's a great application of distraction, actually. And we're also seeing architecture evolve. The sources point to things like acoustic paneling, porous pavements on streets, even using curved surfaces, all designed not just to bounce sound away, but to absorb it.
And that kind of intentional, holistic acoustic design is what makes a place like the High Line in New York City so effective.
The High Line is a brilliant example, yeah. An elevated park built on old railway tracks.
And they use wooden decking,
which is naturally sound absorbing, and then combined it with all this greenery. And the result is this palpable difference. You step up from the street and you just feel a layer of that city stress drop away.
And internationally, Singapore is doing some amazing things. At Gardens by the Bay, those famous super trees are more than just icons.
Right, they're not just sculptures.
Not at all. Their complex branching and huge surface area act as massive natural sound diffusers. They're actively fighting urban noise pollution. And the water features around them just complete that auditory retreat.
I thought the detail on Kampong Admiralty was fascinating, how they apply these same ideas, but on a micro level.
Yeah, they use the buildings themselves as noise barriers, positioning them to shield the living spaces inside.
And using sound muffling techniques, special glass, special walls to make sure residents have serenity, even in a really dense area.
So we can design the external world for calm. But let's be honest, you can't block every single input. So what happens when external design isn't enough?
Then the defense has to come from within.
Exactly. Which brings us to the biology of sensory filtering.
Our brain is a master filter, right? It's constantly blocking out extra noise just so we can, have a conversation like this.
Absolutely. And the research you found actually pinpoints the molecular mechanism behind this noise defense system, specifically something called acoustic habituation.
And that's our ability to stop being startled by a repeated loud sound. The brain just decides, okay, I've heard that one. It's not a threat.
Right. And the technical detail is that this is all controlled by a specific biological dimmer switch in our central nervous system. It's called the BK channel.
A specialized potassium channel. So for our listener, why should we care about the name of this little molecular switch?
We care because when this dimmer switch is broken, the world becomes unbearable. The sources link disruptions in this ability, this habituation, to significant clinical issues. This kind of sensory hypersensitivity is now a recognized diagnostic marker for autism spectrum disorder.
And it's also connected to conditions like schizophrenia.
Yes. So the hope is, if we can understand this biological mechanism, we might be able to target that BK channel with drugs to improve sensory filtering for people who are really struggling.
So that's the biological path to internal peace.
Yeah.
But there's also a conscious, a non-pharmacological solution here. Mindfulness.
We can actively override that stress response. The sources are clear that mindfulness acts as a conscious filtering system. And it doesn't require silence, it just requires engagement with the present.
Which is the exact opposite of letting your mind race about the future while your body is just soaking up street noise.
Precisely.
And the steps for practicing this are surprisingly simple. Even, say, on a crowded, noisy subway car. You keep your eyes open.
You start by grounding yourself. You gently choose a focus point, the handrail, a reflection, anything. Then, and this is key, you actively engage your other senses.
You smell the hot dog stand. You feel the cold metal pole.
Exactly. And the biological anchor here is that third step. Deep, focused belly breathing.
So by physically engaging the diaphragm, you're overriding the sensory input that's trying to trigger a stress response.
You are. It directly engages the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. You are telling your body with your breath that despite the chaos, you're safe.
And that final step, non-judgment. It includes a phrase from the sources I thought was just brilliant. If your mind wanders off, what do you say to yourself?
You just gently acknowledge it. The recommended phrase is, my mind went for a walk. I think I'll go back home now.
I love that. It brings a little bit of levity to it.
Yeah.
It lets you re-engage your conscious filter without getting frustrated at yourself.
It's about actively choosing which inputs you interact with.
Which brings us back to the spaces we interact with in the first place, moving from internal filtering back to architecture and anthropology.
And this takes us straight to Marc Augé's powerful distinction between a place and a non-place.
Right. Augé defined non-places as these spaces of transit and consumption. So motorways, gas stations, airports, subways.
They're defined by their lack of history, their transient nature. Everyone is just a user, a cashier, a driver, a customer.
And this explains that urban loneliness paradox. We're surrounded by millions of people, yet we can feel so isolated.
Why? Because these non-places reduce our identity to just a role. We lack the deep, personal and collective memories that make up a true place.
But Augé also had this beautiful vision for what a true city is. He called it a spatial figure of time that lives through art and imagination. He said you can't look at Paris without thinking of Baudelaire or see Venice without Thomas Mann's influence.
That is a radical statement for a planner or an architect, that the fate of the city is intertwined with the poet. The city needs the imaginary to become more than just concrete.
And that idea designing spaces that force us to slow down, to dwell, to engage that imaginary part of ourselves, that's what inspired the architect Johnny Riley
to create his urban monastery.
Yes.
Riley saw that modern society, especially in these high-pressure cities, we just don't know how to rest. So his response was to adapt the traditional monastic model, a space literally designed for stillness, and integrate it into a high-rise building.
It's a literal attempt to create a place inside a world of non-places. So what design choices did he make to make sure the architecture itself promoted contemplation?
He was very intentional about making the structure physically present. He used massive, oversized, cross-laminated timber, CLT.
Columns nearly a meter thick.
And they are 100% visible throughout the entire building. The idea is that this ubiquitous timber grid makes the inhabitant feel physically and spiritually held.
The grounding metaphor for stability.
Right, and he reinforces this by what he calls contemplative movement. Instead of seamless, forgettable hallways, he deliberately changed the floor and ceiling heights.
So you have to consciously step up or step down to enter different rooms.
It forces you to be aware of your body in that space. It slows you down.
And the pinnacle of this is the walled cloister on the rooftop.
It perfectly captures this goal of selective interaction. The high walls completely shield you from the visual chaos of the city, but the city is still audibly present.
So you hear the hum, the sirens in the distance, but you can't see the source.
You are both detached and central. It forces your gaze upward to the sky and invites real detachment.
That focus on isolation, on reducing disruptive information, it's a stunning bridge to our final segment. We're going to take this idea, isolation, to its absolute extreme.
Down to the fundamental physics of observation itself, to quantum mechanics.
Yes, the sources you shared had a great discussion about the observer effect. I think we all learned in high school that an observer is needed to collapse the wave function.
But scientists, as the sources point out, actually call the term observer cursed.
Cursed!
Because it incorrectly suggests that consciousness, a human mind, is required for the change to happen. The scientific consensus is that the collapse, which they prefer to call decoherence, is caused by measurement, interaction, or interference.
So it's not about the person viewing the result, it's the interaction itself.
Precisely. For a system to stay in that strange quantum state of superposition, being in multiple places at once, it has to be extremely isolated. Think of a qubit in a quantum computer.
Okay.
The moment it interacts with the outside world, that interaction itself provides information that forces the system into one fixed state.
So like if you shine a bright flash of light on a particle to see where it is, the photon from that flash is the interaction. It's so massive to the tiny particle that it changes its path. The interaction is the measurement.
And the measurement is the collapse. It doesn't matter if a human ever looks at the photo, the superposition is gone.
So if we pull that physical principle, that complexity and collapse come from too much interaction back up to our macro level.
We connect it directly to Zen Buddhism's principle of less is more.
The philosophical solution to quantum chaos. We live in a world defined by this constant, overwhelming interaction of materialistic consumerism.
And that drive wasn't an accident. The sources reference Charles Kettering, the research head for General Motors, who helped pioneer the strategy of planned obsolescence.
His goal was, and this is a quote, the organized creation of dissatisfaction.
To make sure consumers never felt content with what they had. To guarantee endless interaction with the marketplace.
The constant need to measure, buy, and replace. So what is the Zen response to that?
Zen philosophy emphasizes intuitive understanding, non-attachment, and a deep respect for nature. It views nature as a friend, not, an object to be conquered and exploited.
And its ethical framework dictates avoiding superfluities, avoiding lavishness. Less is more.
Which gives us a very practical solution. Avoiding excessive interaction and consumption isn't just about internal peace. It becomes a global ethic.
It saves the planet by reducing resource exploitation and all the hazardous waste that comes with it.
It provides both an environmental and an internal solution by radically cutting down on the sheer volume of interactions and measurements our minds and bodies are forced to process every single day.
So, what does this all mean? We've gone from acoustic barriers in Singapore to the biological BK channel, through the isolation of an urban monastery, and all the way down to the physics of decoherence.
The thread that unites all these things, urban design, biology, architecture, physics, is the power and consequence of interaction.
Whether we're designing a tranquil city or preserving a quantum state, the outcome is determined by the interactions we allow.
Chaos comes from too many or the wrong kind of interactions. Tranquility comes from isolation and minimization.
So we have to actively choose to design the world around us and, more importantly, train our own minds to minimize those negative, disruptive interactions and consciously amplify the positive ones.
We learned that decoherence, or collapse, happens when a quantum system interacts with its environment.
So if our personal reality feels chaotic and collapsed by stress and information overload, maybe the principle of less is more is a solution grounded in physical reality. Is the goal of a tranquil life achieved by reducing the number of things we allow ourselves to measure and thus interact with?
Something for you to ponder on your next walk through a bustling street.